Forget the world you just left behind. Close your eyes and listen to the rain, not as a storm, but as a heavy silver curtain falling between you and everything you had to be today. You are anonymous here. You are safe. You are finally deeply. The latch has clicked shut behind you, and the cold, biting air of the outside has been replaced by the scent of ancient cedar and drying lavender. There is a chair waiting for you by the hearth. The wood is dark, polished by a century of quiet travelers, and the velvet cushion holds the lingering warmth of a fire that never truly goes out. Lean back. Let the floor beneath your feet feel solid and unmoving. A foundation of stone that has ignored the passage of kings, the rise of empires, and the relentless ticking of clocks. In this space, time does not move in a straight line. It flows like the amber shadows dancing across the ceiling. We are not here to move forward, to achieve, or to solve. We are here to drift backward into the hushed layers of a history that breathes only in the dark. I have been sitting here, watching the embers pulse like a slow, rhythmic heartbeat, waiting for the sound of your footsteps. I have kept the fire small but steady, just enough to light the pages of old memories and keep the shadows at a comfortable distance. You don't need to tell me your name, nor do you need to explain what road brought you to this door. In this tavern, at this hour, we are all just echoes seeking a moment of silence. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the way the air in this room is different. It is thick with the dust of old books and the sweetness of simmering spices. As you exhale, imagine the tension leaving your shoulders, sliding down your arms and disappearing into the soft fabric of the chair. You are expected. You are sheltered. My voice is simply a constant, a steady hum in the atmosphere to remind you that you are no longer alone in the storm. The world outside is vast and demanding, but this corner is small, intimate, and unchanging. As the firelight flickers, notice how the edges of the room begin to soften. The heavy oak beams above us seem to dip lower, cradling the room in a protective embrace. We are embarking on a journey tonight, but it is one that requires no effort from you. You are the passenger, and the destination is the deep, velvet dark of a perfect rest. Before we begin to peel back the layers of the stories etched into these walls, let yourself sink just a little deeper. The rain will keep the world away. The fire will keep the cold at bay, and I will stay here, keeping watch over the embers as we prepare to listen to the silent language of the night. We are not just observing the past, we are finding a home within it. The journey begins with a single, quiet breath. The storm outside is no longer a noise. It has become a texture, a low-frequency hum that vibrates against the thick, ancient stone walls of this sanctuary. I watch the droplets trail down the leaded glass of the windows, erratic and slow, lit from within by the flickering orange glow of the room. Outside, the world has surrendered to the night. The cobblestones are slick and black, reflecting the dying lanterns of the watchmen, and the wind whistles through the narrow alleys like a ghost seeking a doorway that is already locked. But inside, the air is thick and sweet. It carries the weight of mulled cider, infused with star anise and heavy sticks of cinnamon that have been simmering since the sun went down. Every breath you take here feels warmer than the last, coating your lungs in a gentle, herbal heat. Can you smell the damp wool of the cloaks hanging by the door? It is the smell of a journey ended, the scent of relief that comes when there is nowhere left to go and nothing left to do. I reach for the heavy iron poker and stir the logs in the hearth. The sound is a crisp, metallic chime followed by the soft, satisfying collapse of white ash as it settles into the glowing red heart of the fire. A fresh wave of heat rolls toward your chair, settling over your lap like a heavy, invisible quilt. This is the amber shield. Nothing from the autumn chill can penetrate this circle of light. I see the way the shadows of the rafters stretch and yawn above us, mimicking the way your own muscles are beginning to let go of their tension, uncurling like the smoke from a pipe. The ceiling is high, lost in a haze of cedar-scented gloom. and the beams are dark with the soot of a century of winters. The world is deserted now. The birds are tucked deep into the eaves, their heads under their wings, and the hounds are curled by distant kitchen fires, dreaming of fields they will never have to run across tonight. There is a profound silence beneath the sound of the rain, a silence that belongs to the earth itself as it prepares for the long, slow sleep of the coming winter. You are part of that silence now. You do not have to speak. You do not even have to listen closely. My words are just the smoke from the hearth, rising, swirling, and disappearing into the dark beams above, carrying away the tiny fragments of your day. Listen to the cadence of the droplets hitting the glass. Tap, tap, and a long slide, tap, tap, and silence. It is a language of water and glass. A lullaby written by the sky to remind you that you are protected. The walls here are 3 feet thick, carved from the bedrock of the hills, and they have stood through seasons of ice and seasons of sun without flinching. They hold the heat of the fire and radiate it back to you. A steady, pulsing warmth that feels like a hand resting gently on your shoulder. Notice the weight of your limbs. Notice how the chair seems to rise up to meet you, supporting every curve of your spine, taking the burden of gravity away from your bones. The light in the room is soft, filtered through the dust of old stories and the steam of the kettle. It turns everything into a golden blur. The edges of the tables are rounded by age. The floorboards are polished to a dull shine by the feet of many who sought this same peace. I find my eyes wandering to the other souls who have sought refuge here tonight. They are merely shapes in the gloom, silent sentinels of the night, each one a testament to the safety we have found together. One traveler leans his head against the stone of the fireplace, his eyes closed, his breathing as steady as the tide. Another sits by a guttering candle, the pages of his book turning with a sound like a dry leaf skittering across wood. There is no rush here. The shadows move slowly, drifting from one corner to the next as the candles burn lower. The smell of the rain lingers just at the edge of the doorway, a reminder of the cold that cannot reach you, making the warmth of the cider in your hand feel even more precious. It is a slow, rhythmic existence within these walls. We are in the heart of the autumn, in the very center of the rest that the world requires. As the fire settles into a steady rhythmic pulse, glowing with an intensity that seems to speak of ancient suns, I realize that we are not the only ones who have brought our stories to this hearth. Before the embers turn to gray, let us look at them more closely, not with the eyes of the mind, but with the heart of the weary. The others in this room are your kin in this moment of stillness. They are the silent gallery of the storm, and their presence is the final lock on the door to the outside world. I watch a scribe in the far corner, his pen stilled, his head nodding in time with the flickering wick. I see the heavy shoulders of a laborer finally dropping, his hands open and relaxed on the scarred wood of the table. In their stillness, you find your own. In their silence, your thoughts find a place to rest. They are the watchers of the night, and as long as they are here, you are free to let go. You are free to drift into the spaces between words, into the deep amber glow of the hearth that knows no time, only the eternal, comforting present. We are settled, we are grounded, we are ready to listen to the voices of the past that linger in the grain of the wood. Look around at the others sitting here with us in the dim, flickering light. We are a quiet collection of strangers, a small assembly of souls bound together by the sudden, rhythmic violence of the storm and the shared pull of the hearth. In this space, the usual barriers between us have dissolved, washed away by the relentless rain. There is a profound sense of communal peace here, a silent pact that within these ancient stone walls, we are all equal, all safe, and all entitled to the luxury of deep, uninterrupted rest. It is a rare thing to find such a diverse gallery of lives reduced to the same rhythmic breathing, the same soft, unfocused gaze into the dying embers. We are like a fleet of small wooden boats that have all found their way into the same hidden, mirrored cove. waiting for the high white seas of the world to settle. In the far corner, where the shadows are deepest and the candlelight barely reaches the floor, sits the silent scribe. His workspace is a small, cluttered table piled with rolls of thick, cream-colored parchment and small, glass inkwells that catch the orange light like liquid jewels. He does not write with any haste. Instead, he moves his charcoal in slow, deliberate arcs, sketching the faces of the people in the room, or perhaps the way the gray smoke curls and vanishes around the rafters. There is a meditative, holy quality to his movements, a stillness that suggests he is not just recording the world, but honoring its silence. Every stroke of his hand is a whisper, a soft friction against the paper that you can almost feel in the back of your mind. Beside him, a pair of tired merchants are slumped over their ale, their heavy dark traveling cloaks finally dry and smelling of wood smoke. Their heads nod in a slow, synchronized dance with sleep, their worries about treacherous trade routes and missing gold coins forgotten for the night. Their hands, calloused by the leather reins of horses and the lifting of heavy crates, are open and relaxed on the scarred wood of the table, palms up, as if they have finally let go of everything they were trying to hold on to during the long day. Near the center of the room, a young traveler sits alone, though he seems perfectly content in his solitude, wrapped in a blanket of his own thoughts. He is practicing card tricks, his fingers moving with a fluid, hypnotic grace that defies the flickering light. He shuffles the deck over and over, the sound of the cards a soft, rhythmic thrum, a gentle clicking that blends seamlessly into the crackle of the fire. He isn't performing for anyone. There is no ego in his movement. He is simply lost in the repetition, the muscle memory of the motion providing a secondary anchor for his drifting mind. To his left, an elderly woman in a faded traveling gown knits with needles made of polished bone. Click, click, click. The sound is tiny, a heartbeat of domesticity in the middle of the wild, untamed autumn night. She does not look down at her work. Her eyes are fixed on the dancing flames, her mind clearly wandering through long, sun-drenched corridors of time that only she can see. Every person here is a world unto themselves, a vast library of experiences currently shelved and at rest, waiting for the morning that is still so many hours away. We are all just echoes of the stories we carry in our pockets, fragments of history that have drifted into the same safe port for a single fleeting night. The scribe carries the stories of others in his dark ink. The merchants carry the jagged geography of the continent in their tired bones. The boy carries the luck of the road in his deck of cards. Even the thin layer of dust on their boots tells a complex tale of where they have been and what they have seen under the sun. But tonight, those stories are not being told. They are being held in reserve, tucked away like a candle waiting for a match. There is no pressure to be interesting in this room. There is no need to justify your presence or explain the path that led you to this door. You are simply a part of the gallery, a soft brushstroke in a painting that is perfectly beautifully still. The voices in the room have long since subsided into a low, indistinguishable hum, a warm, heavy blanket of sound that provides a lullaby of human presence without ever demanding your conscious attention. It is the sound of absolute safety. It is the sound of knowing that you are surrounded by people who, like you, only want to be warm and quiet. If a chair scrapes against the floor, it is a soft, distant sound. If someone sighs deeply in their sleep, it is a gentle, reassuring sound. Everything is muffled, as if the very air of the tavern is made of thick, gray velvet. You can feel the collective weight of their relaxation pulling at you, inviting you to close your eyes just a little further, to trust the person sitting next to you as if they were an old, trusted friend from a forgotten life. The scribe dips his pen into the stillness. The merchants breathe in time with the wind, and the fire burns on, indifferent to the names we call ourselves or the titles we claim outside these heavy walls. Notice how the light plays on the surfaces around you, the dull brass of a heavy kettle, the black iron of a door latch, the deep, ancient grain of the oak tables. Everything has a soft, blurred edge now, as if seen through a veil of sleep. The room feels as though it is underwater, protected from the sharp, jagged edges of reality by leagues of calm, dark sea. This is the silent gallery of the storm, a place where time has lost its bite, and history is nothing more than a soft vibration in the cool air. The comfort of the group is your shield. You are tucked into the very middle of this circle of warmth, and the heavy stone of the tavern is the fortress that keeps the chaos and the cold at bay. I watch as the scribe finally sets down his charcoal and closes his eyes, his chin resting gently on his chest. I watch as the young traveler puts his cards away and leans back into the deep shadows, his face disappearing into the soft, welcoming dark. The room is settling. The energy is sinking lower and lower, like clear water finding its level in a deep well. We are all drifting now, suspended in this amber moment of shared sanctuary. The storm may howl, and the wind may claw at the heavy slate of the roof, but inside this gallery, there is only the pulse of the fire and the steady, quiet breathing of the strangers who have become your silent companions in the dark. As I look at the stones of the hearth, darkened by centuries of wood smoke and old secrets, I am reminded that this tavern has seen thousands of nights, exactly like this one. It has held the weary and the lost since before the maps were redrawn, since before the kings of old were even born. The building itself remembers every sigh and every word shared in the low light. Some stories are light as air, drifting away like the smoke from a pipe, forgotten before the morning sun can find the windows. But some stories are heavier than others, etched into the very stones of the earth, waiting for the right moment of absolute silence to be told. The fire is burning at just the right temperature now, and the room is quiet enough to hear the whispers of the past that are trapped in the mortar and the grain of the wood. It is time to listen to one of those heavier tales, the kind that anchors the soul to the ground and allows the mind to finally, completely, let go of the world. I remember a tale from the deep, forgotten mines of the far north, a story that was whispered by the wind and carried through the roots of the world long before the first heavy stone of this tavern was ever laid in the earth. It is a story that belongs to the ancient, silent bedrock, to the places where the sun has never reached and where the air is as cold, still, and heavy as a tomb. In those days, there was a king, a man of immense vision and even greater desperation, whose name has been worn away by the centuries like writing on a tombstone, leaving only the legend of his impossible ambition. He was not a king of war, nor was he a king of coin. He was a man obsessed with the one enemy no iron blade can strike and no stone wall can keep out. He was a king who feared the end of things. He feared the fading of the light in his hall, the graying of his hair in the silver mirror, and the way the seasons marched on, indifferent to his desires. While other rulers built monuments of gold and ivory to be seen by the sky, he turned his gaze downward, into the silent, unmoving roots of the mountains, searching for a secret that had been hidden since the world was first cooling from the fire of the stars. He believed, with a conviction that bordered on a quiet and dangerous madness, that deep within the black bedrock lay a stone unlike any other, a gem formed not of light, but of pure, concentrated time. He called it the heart of the mountain, and he believed that if he could only touch it, he could command the years to stop their relentless crawl. He did not want wealth. He wanted a pause. He wanted to freeze the world in a state of eternal, golden autumn, where nothing would ever wither, no leaf would ever hit the ground, and no one would ever have to say a final goodbye. He dreamt of a kingdom where time was a lake instead of a river, and so he led his finest, most loyal miners into the dark. I can almost hear the sound of it now, if I close my eyes and listen to the rhythmic, hypnotic tapping of the rain against the tavern roof. Imagine the sound of 1,000 pickaxes striking against ancient black rock, a steady, rhythmic clink. Clink, 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 echoing through tunnels so deep that the very weight of the mountain seemed to press against their lungs. The air in those shafts was thick with the scent of wet stone, cold iron, and the heavy dust of ages. It was a darkness so absolute that the flickering torches seemed to barely dent it, their small orange flames shivering in the damp, subterranean drafts. The king walked among his men, his eyes bright with a feverish, desperate light. They dug for months, then years, moving deeper into the silent, unyielding belly of the world where the silence itself felt like a heavy velvet shroud. Every step they took them further from the sun, further from the sound of birds, and further from the memory of the wind. They passed veins of pure, virgin silver that would have made empires rich, and pockets of emeralds that glowed like feline eyes in the dark. But the king would not let them stop. Deeper, he would whisper, his voice rasping in the thin, cold air. Further down, he would urge, where the stone is older than the sky itself. The deeper they went, the more the world changed. The rocks began to take on strange, fluid shapes, as if they had been frozen in the middle of a scream or a dance. The miners began to speak in whispers, fearing that the mountain was listening. They reached a place where the air grew unnaturally still, where even the sound of their breath seemed to be swallowed by the walls. It was here that they first encountered the hum, a low tectonic vibration that traveled up through the leather soles of their boots and settled deep in their marrow. It was not a sound heard with the ears, but felt with the soul. It was a sound like the grinding of slow, massive gears at the edge of the universe. A sound that made the heart want to slow its beat to match the ancient, agonizing rhythm of the mountain. The king, however, felt no fear. To him, the hum was a siren song. He pushed his men harder, even as their lanterns grew dim and their spirits grew weary. He spent his nights sitting in the darkness of the lowest shaft, pressing his ear to the cold stone, listening to the secrets of the deep. He began to forget the warmth of the sun and the color of the sky. To him, the only reality was the stone, the dark, and the promise of the pause. He became as gray as the dust that covered him, his movements slowing, his eyes unfocused as he drifted further into the trance of the earth. He was becoming part of the world he sought to master, long before he ever touched the stone. The tunnels became narrower, the stone harder, yet the king's will was unyielding. He had spent his entire life running from the end, and now, he felt he was finally standing at the beginning of forever. The miners, driven by a mixture of loyalty and terror, broke through a final wall of translucent, milky quartz. The air that rushed out was not stale, but ancient, a breath from a time before man, before trees, before the stars had names. And there, in the center of a cavern lined with jagged shards of crystal, sat the heart. It did not glitter. It did not reflect the light of their trembling torches. It pulsed with a slow, heavy grayness, the color of a storm cloud that never breaks, or a mountain peak at the exact moment of twilight. I want you to imagine the king standing on the edge of that inner sanctum. His cloak is tattered, his crown is forgotten in a pile of rubble miles above, and his hands are scarred by the labor of 1,000 days. He is so close now. The hum of the mountain is so loud it feels like a physical weight on his shoulders, pressing him down, inviting him to kneel. The flickering orange light of the last torch reflects off the quartz walls, creating 1,000 distorted versions of him, all reaching out, all waiting for the moment when time would finally stop. The silence in that cavern was not an absence of noise, but a presence of its own. It was a silence that had waited for millions of years for a human heartbeat to interrupt it. The king took a step forward, his boots crunching on the crystal floor with a sound like breaking glass. Each step felt like an age. Each breath felt like a century. He was moving into a place where the rules of the surface no longer apply. As he drew closer to the pulsing gray stone, he felt a strange sensation in his chest, as if his own heart were trying to slow down. to synchronize with the rhythmic vibration of the mountain's core. He was not afraid. He was coming home to the stillness he had always craved. The king stood at the very edge of the inner sanctum, his tattered cloak hanging heavy like wet earth, his breath coming in slow, shallow gasps that seemed to freeze in the air before they could even leave his lips. The heart of the mountain sat before him on a pedestal of jagged obsidian, pulsing with a light that was not light at all, but a rhythmic shadow, a deep and ancient gray that seemed to pull at the very fabric of the room. He reached out his hand, his fingers scarred by years of obsession and the cold bite of the mines, and for a moment, he hesitated. He felt the immense weight of the mountain above him, thousands of tons of rock, soil and roots pressing down, silent and indifferent. He felt the silence of the cavern, a silence that had waited since the dawn of the world to be broken by a human touch. And then, with a final trembling exhale, his fingertips made contact with the cold, unresponsive surface of the stone. The moment of contact was not a crash of thunder or a flash of blinding light. It was a whisper. It was a sudden, absolute cessation of all noise. The king's heart gave one final heavy beat, and then it simply stopped, not in death, but in a state of perfect crystalline suspension. He felt a wave of profound cold wash over his skin, beginning at his fingertips and moving upward, turning his warm blood into slow, cooling silt. It was not a painful sensation. It was the feeling of a long-awaited rest finally arriving. He felt his muscles lose their tension, but they did not go soft. Instead, they hardened, taking on the density and the permanence of the granite walls around him. His skin turned the color of ash, then the color of flint, as his pores closed forever against the intrusion of the air. The reveal was a quiet, devastating truth that bloomed in his mind, just as his thoughts began to crystallize. He realized, in that final second of human consciousness, that he had achieved exactly what he had sought, but at a cost he had never truly understood. He had wanted to stop the clock, to freeze the world in a state of eternal autumn, so that nothing would ever end. But to stop time is to stop life itself, to live forever. To truly become part of the unchanging earth, one must surrender the ability to move, to feel, and to breathe. He found that immortality was not a long, golden afternoon, but a deep, unyielding winter. He did not become a god of time. He became a part of the mountain's geology. He was preserved, yes, perfectly and beautifully. But he was now as silent as the stones he had spent his life excavating. His miners, watching from the shadows of the tunnel entrance, saw their king go perfectly still. They saw the orange glow of their torches reflect off his skin as if it were polished marble. They called out his name, but no breath stirred in his lungs. They saw his hand, forever outstretched, and forever gripping the gray stone, as he became the ultimate monument to his own desire. Terror, cold and sharp, finally broke through their loyalty. They turned and fled, their footsteps echoing like panicked heartbeats through the winding shafts, leaving their king alone in his silent throne room of rock. They left him to preside over a kingdom of shadow, where the only movement is the slow growth of crystals, and the only sound is the weight of the earth settling into itself. As the centuries passed, the tunnels collapsed, the maps were lost, and the king's name was forgotten by the people of the sun. But he is still there, deep beneath the roots of the world, a silent sentinel in the dark. He is a king of stone now, his eyes open but unseeing, his mind a vast, cold gallery of frozen memories. He has achieved the pause he craved. The years do not touch him. The seasons do not change for him. The wars of the surface and the falling of empires are nothing more than a faint, distant vibration that he barely feels. He is the ultimate anchor, the stone soul that knows the secret of the long, deep sleep. Now they say that when the night is very still and the wind is low outside this tavern, you can hear the faint, distant grinding of stone against stone. It is a slow, tectonic sigh, a reminder of the king who succeeded in stopping time and discovered that the only way to stay forever was to never move again. The story of the stone soul is a heavy one, a narrative that settles into the mind like the dust of the mines, pulling the spirit down into a state of profound, immovable rest. Here in the comfort of our tavern, the king's fate acts as a velvet weight upon your eyelids, encouraging you to accept the stillness of this moment. We are lucky to be temporary. We are lucky to have the ability to dream and the necessity of waking. As the fire in the hearth settles into its own rhythmic pulse, glowing with a warmth that the king will never feel again, you can feel the safety of your own mortality. You are here, you are breathing, and you are allowed to let the world move on without you for a while. The mountain is deep, the king is silent, and you are free to drift into the spaces between the stories. The fire flickers, casting a long dancing shadow across the floor as the flames catch on a final pocket of sap. The wood hisses a soft, comforting sound that brings our thoughts back from the deep tunnels and the frozen king. The air in the room remains warm and spiced, a stark contrast to the cold dark of the legend. I watch the smoke rise, twisting in the air before it vanishes into the rafters, a perfect symbol of the fleeting, beautiful nature of our lives. We are safe here. We are in the light. We are alive in the most wonderful passing way. And just as we settle back into the quiet of the present, the latch on the heavy oak door lifts with a familiar metallic click. A gust of cool, rain-scented air sweeps across the floorboards as someone new enters through the heavy oak door, bringing with them the sharp, invigorating scent of the wild, wet night outside. The arrival is a soft ripple in our peace, a new thread being woven into the fabric of our evening. A woman steps into the light, her cloak dripping with silver rain, her presence commanding a different kind of silence. She does not look like a traveler from the local roads. She looks like a memory that has decided to take form. As she moves toward the hearth, the story of the Stone King fades into the background, making room for a new mystery, one that smells of pine needles and ancient, violet-eyed magic. A sudden, sweeping gust of cool, rain-scented air surges across the floorboards as the heavy oak door swings wide, following a figure who steps into the room with an effortless, haunting grace that seems to quiet the very flames in the hearth. She brings the pure essence of the wild, wet night with her, a sharp and refreshing contrast to the stagnant, heavy warmth we have been cultivating in our corner. The tavern, for all its thick stone and sturdy beams, seems to shiver momentarily at her presence, not in fear, but in recognition of something ancient. I watch from the shadows as she shakes the silver droplets from a cloak that appears to be woven from the very fabric of the midnight mist itself, a garment that does not hold water, but seems to let it slide off like light off a mirror. She moves without the heavy, rhythmic footfalls of the merchants, or the tired, dragging clatter of the miners. Her footsteps are entirely silent, as if she is navigating a few inches above the floorboards, drifting through the sea of sleeping travelers with a predatory yet peaceful elegance. She approaches the bar, and the light of the guttering candles seems to bend toward her, drawn by a gravity that is impossible to explain. Her eyes are the color of deep, sunless amethysts, a striking and unnatural violet that glows with a soft, inner luminescence, and her features are carved with a precision that makes the breath catch and then release slowly in the throat. She does not look weary from the road. She does not look like someone who has been fighting the teeth of the storm. Instead, she looks as though she is an integral part of it, the calm center of the cyclone. When she speaks, her voice is a low, melodic vibration that hums in the air long after she has finished, like the sound of a distant cello played in an empty stone cathedral. She orders a drink that is not the heavy ale or the simple, sweet cider the others favor, but a concoction of rare, ground spices and dragon breath foam that hisses and glows with a faint, bioluminescent blue light, casting a ghostly radiance against her pale skin. As she waits for her glass, she turns slowly to survey the room. I watch her interact with the boisterous miners who, only moments ago, were nodding off over their drinks. They straighten up in their seats, their rough, gravelly voices dropping to a hushed, respectful murmur. There is no fear in the room, but there is a profound sense of awe that settles over everyone like a fine dust. She acknowledges them with a slight, regal tilt of her head, a gesture so ancient and sophisticated that it feels entirely out of place in a humble village tavern. Her beauty is sharp and breathtaking, almost dangerous in its perfection, like a silver blade hidden in a wrap of violet velvet. She possesses a stillness that is entirely different from the rest we have been discussing. It is the focused stillness of a hawk on a high branch, or the heavy silence of the clouds just before they break into rain. I observe the way she holds her glass, her long, slender fingers tracing the rim as the blue foam bubbles and pops with a sound like tiny stars extinguishing. There is something about the way she carries herself, the proud slant of her shoulders, the way she completely ignores the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall that betrays a deep, unsettling truth. She does not belong to this specific time. She does not belong to this century, or perhaps even to this plane of human existence. She is a fragment of a different history, a survivor of an era that the maps and the scholars have long since forgotten. Yet the tavern does not reject her presence. These stones have seen many things that defy human logic over the centuries, and the hearth welcomes the strange and the beautiful just as warmly as it welcomes the common and the plain. In this sanctuary, the boundaries between the possible and the impossible are as thin as the steam rising from her glowing cup. She catches my gaze across the flickering shadows and offers a slow, knowing smile that suggests she can see the stories hidden behind my eyes. In that exact moment, the fire in the hearth seems to surge with new life, the flames burning a little brighter, a little hotter, as if acknowledging a long-lost kin. The orange light reflects in her violet eyes, dancing in the dark pupils, like twin stars born in the void. The tension in the air does not rise into discomfort. Instead, it settles into a new kind of heavy, quiet curiosity that does not demand an immediate answer. A mystery that invites you to simply watch, breathe, and drift. She is a living reminder that the world is much larger, much deeper, and much older than the small walls we build to keep the darkness out. She takes a slow, deliberate sip of her glowing drink, the blue light illuminating her face for a heartbeat before she leans back into the high-backed chair right next to yours. The scent of crushed pine needles, ozone, and old magic follows her, settling into the very fabric of the cushions. She looks at me, then at the dying embers, her expression softening into something resembling an ageless nostalgia. She leans her head back against the dark wood, and her voice drifts over to me, soft and cool as a falling leaf in a silent forest. She does not ask about the condition of the roads or the intensity of the weather. She leans back, closes her violet eyes, and asks me for a story of the forest, a tale of the deep. Green places where the trees have long memories, and the shadows have their own steady heartbeats. The room is perfectly primed now, suspended between the history of the stone and the mystery of the woods, as we prepare to follow her gaze into the emerald dark. In the heart of the ancient mist-shrouded vale, far beyond where the mountain shadows reach and the rivers forget their names, there was once a queen of immense and legendary grace. She was a ruler whose beauty was said to be borrowed from the first light of spring, a woman who moved through her gardens with a step so light that the dew remained undisturbed on the clover. Her kingdom was a place of eternal, soft green, a sanctuary where the air always smelled of damp earth and blooming jasmine. But as the years began to turn, as they always must, the queen felt a cold shadow beginning to stretch across the sunlit corridors of her heart. She looked into the polished silver of her mirrors and saw not just herself, but the inevitable march of the seasons. She saw the way the petals of the lilies would brown at the edges, The way the golden wheat would eventually bow its head to the scythe, and the way the vibrant emerald of the forest would inevitably fade into the brittle, skeletal gray of winter. She found that she could not bear the thought of fading. She could not accept that her grace was a lease, a temporary gift from a world that demands everything back in the end. And so, she began to walk deeper into the woods, away from the manicured paths and the singing fountains, seeking the ancient places where the trees have no names and the roots grow so thick they choke the very sunlight. She sought the spirit of the briar, the consciousness of the wild, tangled edge of the world. She made a pact in the deep emerald silence. A trade whispered into the hollow of an oak tree older than the mountains. To keep her beauty, to remain forever unchanged while the world withered around her, she offered up the one thing that kept her connected to the rhythm of life. She traded her warm, beating heart for a mass of twisted, silver-tipped briars. Imagine the transformation as it began, slow and rhythmic, matching the pace of the falling leaves. As the warmth left her chest, a new kind of life took root. It was a life that did not need breath. It was a life of slow, creeping wood and sharp, protective thorns. I want you to visualize the forest as she saw it then, a cycle of endless, repetitive motion. Look at the leaves. See them turning to a heavy, molten gold. Watch as they hang, suspended in the cool autumn air, before they begin their long, spiraling descent to the forest floor. They fall, and they settle, and they decay, only to rise again as the emerald shoots of the following spring. Gold to brown, brown to gray, gray to green. It is a loop that never ends, a circle that breathes with the earth. The queen watched this cycle, but she no longer felt a part of it. She stood still, her feet becoming like roots, her skin turning as pale and hard as the bark of a birch tree. The thorns began to grow. They did not grow with the haste of a storm, but with the agonizing, hypnotic slowness of a glacier. They wound around her arms, delicate and sharp, etching silver patterns into her flesh that never bled. They coiled around her throat like a necklace of iron lace. Every morning, the sun would rise over the vale, casting a long, pale light through the canopy. And every morning, the queen was exactly as she had been the day before. The flowers in her garden would bloom, their petals opening in a slow-motion explosion of color, and then they would wilt, their life retreating back into the dark soil. But the queen remained. She was a statue of grace in a world of constant decay. She watched the seasons change 100 times, 1,000 times, until the very concept of time became nothing more than a blur of shifting colors. Green to gold, gold to gray, gray to green. The rhythm of the forest became her only companion. She listened to the sap rising in the trees, a slow, viscous pulse that mirrored the slow growth of the briars in her chest. She watched the spiders weave their webs between her frozen fingers, the silk shimmering with the morning dew before the wind tore it away, only for the spider to begin again, and again, and again. There is a profound heaviness in this kind of permanence. To never change is to become a monument to the very things you fear. The queen sat on her throne of roots, her eyes fixed on the horizon, watching the sun set and rise in an endless, flickering loop. The light would hit the gold leaf on the wall, then it would fade into the blue of twilight. Then the silver of the moon would trace the edges of the thorns, and then the cycle would begin once more. The air around her was always still, always heavy with the scent of pine and old stone. She became the center of the wood, the silent heart of the briar. The animals of the forest began to treat her as part of the landscape. The deer grazing at her feet, the owls nesting in the crown that had long since been overtaken by ivy. She was beautiful, yes, more beautiful than any mortal woman could ever hope to be. But it was a beauty that lacked the warmth of a pulse. It was the beauty of a frost-covered meadow or a mountain peak at midnight. It was a beauty that did not invite a touch, for the thorns were always there. waiting just beneath the surface of the grace, ready to remind the world that she had chosen the path of the unmoving. In this stillness, your own thoughts begin to mimic the Queen's garden. Imagine the leaves falling around your chair, one by one. They drift down, settling into the shadows of the tavern floor. Gold to brown, brown to gray, gray to green. The cycle is effortless. You don't have to do anything to make the seasons change. You don't have to do anything to make the sun set. You are simply a witness to the repetition. The Queen's story is a loop, a circle of emerald and silver that winds around your mind, pulling you deeper into the velvet cushions, further away from the need to move or speak. The thorns are soft now, like the edges of a dream, winding slowly around the day you just finished, tucking the memories away into the cool, damp earth of the vale. The Queen sat upon her throne of ancient calcified roots, her gaze fixed eternally on the horizon where the emerald canopy met the pale violet of the sky. She had achieved the impossible stillness she had craved. But in doing so, she had become a prisoner of the very beauty she sought to preserve. Inside her chest, where a warm heart once pulsed with the rhythm of human emotion, there was now only the slow, silent expansion of the silver briars. They did not beat, they grew. They did not feel, they endured. I want you to visualize the way these thorns move, not with a start or a jump, but with a persistent glacial crawl that mimics the shifting of shadows across a sundial. They wind around the memory of who she used to be, layer upon layer, until the woman and the wood are one and the same. Outside the Palace of Thorns, the forest continued its relentless, circular dance. Green to gold, gold to brown, brown to gray, gray to green. It is a cycle that knows no fatigue, a repetition that provides the very foundation of the world. The Queen watched the leaves of the great oaks turn from the vibrant liquid emerald of spring to the heavy sun-drenched gold of late August. She watched as they grew tired and brittle, their veins hardening until they could no longer hold the branch. She watched as they fell spiraling down, drifting through the shafts of misty light, landing with a soundless impact upon the mossy earth. And then, she watched as the snow covered them, a white, heavy blanket of silence that lasted for what felt like an eternity, only for the cycle to begin again. Gold to brown, brown to gray, gray to green. But for the Queen, there was no falling and no rising. She was a constant in a world of variables. Her skin remained as smooth as polished ivory, her eyes as bright as cold stars, her gown of silk never fraying despite the passage of centuries. Yet, this beauty was a facade, a shimmering veil drawn over a hunger that never truly sleeps. It was the hunger of the briar, a slow, patient craving to consume everything that moves, to pull the entire world into its state of frozen perfection. The thorns did not just stay within her. They began to reach out from the hem of her dress, crawling across the stone floor like slow-moving snakes of iron. They climbed the pillars, winding around the marble carvings, replacing the stone grapes with silver thorns. They reached for the light, not to bask in it, but to catch it and hold it still. Imagine the sound of the forest in this part of the vale. It is not the sound of wind or birds, but the sound of growth. A slow, rhythmic creak as the wood expands, a soft, dry hiss as the thorns brush against the ancient tapestries. It is a monotonous sound, a white noise that fills the ears and numbs the mind. It is the sound of a clock that has forgotten how to count seconds, and instead counts centuries. The air in the Queen's chamber was thick with the scent of dried roses and cold iron, a smell that never changed, never faded, and never refreshed. It was a scent that invited the senses to simply stop searching, to accept the heavy, stagnant peace of the briar. Every night, the moon would trace the same silver path across the floor. Every night, the owls would call from the same branch in the same tone. The repetition was so absolute that it became a form of magic in itself, a spell of boredom and beauty that could put the very stars to sleep. The queen did not move her hand. She did not blink her eyes. She simply existed at the center of the web, a masterpiece of stillness. She watched the frost form on the windows in patterns that looked like lace. And then she watched the sun melt them away, only for the frost to return the following night in the exact same shape. Patterns repeating, colors shifting, life retreating and returning in an endless, predictable loop. As you listen to the story of the queen, feel the thorns of her garden beginning to soften in your mind. They are not sharp to you. They are like the delicate silver threads of a dream, winding slowly around the edges of your consciousness. They are tucking you into the silence of the vale. The world outside the tavern, the world of noise and movement, is fading away, replaced by the emerald gloom of the Briar Queen's hall. Green to gold, gold to brown, brown to gray, gray to green. The rhythm is within you now. Your breathing has slowed to match the rising of the sap in the ancient trees. Your heart is finding its own state of suspension, protected from the rush of time by the heavy velvet walls of this story. There is no danger in this hunger, only a profound magnetic pull toward the earth. The queen's beauty is a lighthouse for the weary, a promise that you can stop fighting the change and simply be. She has traded the chaos of the heart for the order of the wood, and in her presence, the very idea of effort feels distant and unnecessary. The thorns grow slow, winding around the day you have just completed, weaving a protective barrier between you and the tomorrow that has not yet arrived. You are becoming part of the landscape of the vale, a silent observer in the gallery of the queen. The light is growing dimmer, the shadows are stretching longer, and the loop of the forest is pulling you down, deeper and deeper, into the cool, damp moss of a perfect, unchanging rest. As the deepest hours of the night settle over the ancient vale, the distinction between the queen and the forest she commands has vanished entirely. There is no longer a woman sitting on a throne. There is only the briar, a living architecture of silver and emerald that breathes with the slow tectonic rhythm of the earth itself. The repetition of the seasons has become so dense, so layered, that time has begun to fold in on itself. The queen sees the buds of next spring, even as the frost of this winter patterns her brow. She feels the warmth of 1,000 suns and the bite of 1,000 blizzards all at once, held in a perfect, frozen equilibrium. It is the ultimate loop, a circle so tight that movement is no longer necessary. Green to gold, gold to brown, brown to gray, gray to green. The colors are no longer changes. They are simply states of being, repeating in a sequence that provides a foundation for the very air you breathe. Look closer at the thorns that now encase the hall. They are not jagged or chaotic. They are symmetrical, following the sacred geometry of the wood. They spiral in perfect golden ratios, mirroring the shape of the galaxies and the curve of a snail's shell. Every thorn is a sentinel, guarding a memory of a heartbeat that was traded long ago. And yet, there is no sadness in this hall. There is only the profound relief of a world that has finally stopped trying to be anything other than what it is. The queen has discovered the secret of the forest. That true peace is found not in the absence of hunger, but in the acceptance of the loop. Beauty is often a facade for a hunger that never sleeps. But when the hunger is satisfied by the stillness of the earth, the beauty becomes a shield. The imagery begins to blur now, like a reflection in a pond disturbed by a single heavy drop of rain. The emerald leaves of the vale begin to blend with the amber shadows of the tavern rafters. The sound of the wind in the briars becomes indistinguishable from the soft hiss of the fire in the hearth. The queen's throne of roots seems to merge with the high-backed chair where you are sitting. You are the queen, and you are the traveler, and you are the stone. You are part of the loop. The thorns grow slow, winding around the memory of who you were when you first walked through that heavy oak door. They are weaving a cocoon of safety, a silver web of protection that separates you from the demands of the waking world. Every breath you take is a leaf falling. Every heartbeat is a seed taking root in the cool, dark silt. The rhythm is so steady, so monotonous, that it pulls your consciousness down into the velvet depths of the moss. There is no need to follow the story anymore. The story has become the atmosphere. It is the air you breathe and the warmth against your skin. The Queen of Thorns is not a legend. She is the silence that remains when all the words have been spoken. She is the steady growth of the wood that continues while the world sleeps. She is the anchor in the middle of the storm, the one who stayed still while everything else moved. The room is growing dim now. I can see the candles on the mantel have burned halfway down, their wicks leaning into pools of liquid wax that look like small white lakes in the gloom. The light is softer, more fragile, casting long and spindly shadows that dance in time with the dying embers. The boisterous energy of the earlier evening has completely evaporated, leaving only a peaceful, heavy hush. The violet-eyed stranger has finished her drink, the blue glow of the foam extinguished, her gaze now lost in the same flickering orange pulse that holds us all. She is satisfied. The forest has been honored. The stone has been remembered. The loop of the queen is closing. The thorns have finished their work for the night, having woven a perfect, impenetrable wall between you and the noise of the outside. The leaves have all fallen. The gold has turned to brown, and the brown has found its rest in the gray of the earth. Everything is settled. Everything is in its proper place. My voice is becoming a distant hum, a part of the background noise like the rain, or the ticking of the clock that no longer seems to matter. We are moving away from the forest and the vale, drifting back into the soft, blurred reality of the tavern, where the fire is the only heart that still beats with any vigor. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and peace. As the last echoes of the Queen's Garden fade from your mind, you find yourself exactly where you need to be. The journey has been long, the stories have been heavy, and the room is finally quiet enough for the deepest kind of rest. I watch as the last spark flies up the chimney, a tiny star disappearing into the night, and I realize that the story has done its job. The thorns are soft, the stone is silent, the world is asleep. The candles are low, the shadows are long, and the night is yours to claim. We are here, in the dimming light, suspended in a moment that has no end and no beginning. Just the fire, the rain, and the steady, quiet rhythm of the dark. This final transition begins with a shift in the air, a break in the heavy, hypnotic spell of the forest. I will provide Section 7 first to ensure we hit the massive 15. Zero character target through rich sensory detail before moving to the final closure. The profound emerald silence of the Queen's Garden is suddenly shattered, not by a scream or a storm, but by the most human of sounds. The sharp sudden clatter of a pewter tankard hitting the stone floor. It is a bright ringing noise that bounces off the rafters and startles the shadows. For a heartbeat, the room freezes. Then, as if a dam has burst, the heavy tension of the ancient legends dissolves into a wave of warm, messy reality. A clumsy traveler, reaching for a slice of honey cake in his sleep, has managed to sweep an entire tray of refreshments onto the floor. The sound of breaking ceramic and the soft thud of falling bread acts as a release valve for the entire room. After the weight of the Stone King and the chill of the Briar Queen, this sudden, clumsy spill is a gift of the ordinary. What follows is a scene of gentle, absurd chaos that warms the heart more than the hearth ever could. In the center of the room, a massive orc, who had been snoring like a landslide just moments ago, wakes up with a start. He doesn't look for a weapon. Instead, his eyes lock onto a stray meat pie that has skidded across the floor and come to rest near his boot. Without a word, and with a look of intense, scholarly focus, he picks it up, brushes off a stray bit of sawdust, and begins to eat his way through the mess with a rhythmic, contented crunching. To his left, A seasoned hunter, a man who likely tracks mountain lions for sport, is currently sitting in stunned silence. A large portion of a butter-topped plum pie having landed squarely on his leather-bound shoulder. The yellow butter is slowly melting, trailing down his cloak like a golden ribbon, and after a moment of staring at his ruined finery, he simply laughs. It is a deep, infectious belly laugh that shakes the soot from the chimney and breaks the last of the evening's solemnity. The laughter spreads like a slow-moving fire. The merchants chuckle into their beards. The young traveler drops his cards in amusement, and even the violet-eyed stranger offers a soft, musical trill of a laugh that seems to lighten the very air. This is the gentle chaos of the living. It is the reminder that no matter how ancient the stones or how dark the history, there is always room for a spilled drink and a shared joke. The mess on the floor is a map of a moment well spent. Someone tosses a crust of bread at a friend. The barmaid shakes her head with a weary but affectionate smile. A hound wakes up and begins to enthusiastically assist the orc in his cleaning duties. It is a beautiful, ridiculous display of life in all its unpolished glory. I watch the way the light catches the spilled cider, turning the puddles on the floor into shimmering pools of amber. The absurdity of it all is a form of medicine. It pulls the mind out of the deep, dark tunnels of the past and anchors it in the messy, joyful present. We spend so much of our lives trying to be perfect, trying to be as unmoving as the Stone King or as flawless as the Briar Queen. But it is these small, messy, imperfect moments that make us feel most alive. The spill doesn't need to be fixed immediately. The butter on the hunter's shoulder is not a tragedy. They are simply the punctuation marks at the end of a long, weary day, a reminder that we are here. We are human, and we are safe enough to be foolish. Slowly, the laughter begins to fade, settling back into a comfortable, appreciative silence. The energy of the room hasn't vanished. It has simply softened, turning from a sharp focus into a warm, hazy glow. The tavern's cleaning magic, perhaps a few whispered words from the barmaid, or simply the natural order of a place that has seen 1,000 such spills, begins to take effect. The shards of the tankard seem to find their way into a neat pile. The sawdust is swept away by a phantom breeze, and the scent of the spilled plum pie lingers in the air like a sweet, final note of a song. The orc returns to his slumber, his stomach full, and his heart light. The hunter wipes the butter from his cloak with a grin that lingers on his face even as his eyes begin to close once more. The tavern is settling now, truly settling. The frantic pulse of the world outside has no power here. The guests are beginning to drift away, not into the rain, but into the deeper layers of their own dreams. One by one, the lanterns are being turned low. The scribe has packed away his ink. The merchants have pulled their cloaks over their heads like cocoons. The young traveler has finally put his deck of cards to rest. The movement is slow, fluid, and inevitable, like the tide retreating from a shore. The room is returning to its primary state, a sanctuary of shadows and soft light. The gentle chaos was the final breath of the day. And now, the night is ready to take its turn. The last door is finally closed, the heavy iron bolt sliding home with a sound as soft as a sigh. The laughter has vanished into the grain of the wood, and the footsteps have faded into the velvet dark of the upstairs hallways. Now, at the very edge of the night, it is just you, me, and the dying fire. The tavern has become a cathedral of stillness. I look around at the empty tables, where only hours ago there was talk of empires and magic, and I see only the silver moonlight stealing through the high windows. It touches the polished wood, creating long, shimmering paths of pale light that look like water. The world outside is no longer a threat. The storm has exhausted itself, leaving only the rhythmic, peaceful dripping of water from the eaves and the clean, cold smell of the rain-washed streets. The village of Stonebridge is sleeping. Every hearth is a bed of gray ash. Every window is a dark eye, and every soul is currently wandering through the landscapes of their own imagination. You have traveled very far tonight. You have walked through the deep, frozen shafts of the mountain, and wandered through the emerald, thorn-wrapped halls of the Vale. You have carried the weight of legends and shared the laughter of strangers. But your journey is over now. The road has brought you here, to this specific chair, in this specific circle of light. And the road is satisfied. You are home. You are exactly where you are meant to be. And there is absolutely nothing left for you to do but exist. Watch the final ember in the hearth. It is a tiny pulsing star of orange, buried deep in a nest of soft, white ash. It doesn't struggle to stay lit. It simply glows, radiating a final, gentle warmth that reaches out to touch your hands one last time. It is a slow, rhythmic pulse, the heartbeat of the house. As you watch it, feel your own breath slowing to match its pace. In and out, deep and slow. The air in the room is cool now, but your blanket is heavy and warm. The shadows on the ceiling are no longer dancing. They are drifting, shifting so slowly that you cannot see them move. Only feel the way they cradle the room in a protective embrace. The memory of the rain is a lullaby. It is a silver curtain that has washed away the dust of your day, the worries of your mind, and the tension in your bones. You are floating in a pool of absolute safety. The thick stone walls of the tavern are your fortress. The ancient oak beams are your shield, and the silence is your sanctuary. There is no tomorrow yet. Tomorrow is a distant land, a place you cannot see from here and have no need to visit. There is only this moment, this perfect, dim, and quiet now. Your eyelids are so heavy, weighted by the velvet dark and the scent of lavender and old wood. Let them close, let the world blur until it is nothing more than a soft, warm hum in the back of your mind. The fire is fading, the light is retreating, and the night is stepping forward to take you into its arms. You are safe, you are loved by the silence, you are protected by the stone. The journey has ended, and the rest has begun. Close your eyes, let the breath carry you away, and listen to the rain as it keeps its steady, faithful watch over the sleeping world. Sleep now, deep, deep sleep. The embers are turning to gray, and the dark is a soft, welcoming sea. I'll be here when the next storm arrives. Whether the wind howls or the snow falls, the latch will always lift for you. I will have the cider simmering, the fire crackling, and a new story waiting in the shadows. I am the watcher of the hearth, the keeper of the silence, and I will be here, always here, whenever you need to find the quiet again. But for now, the story is done. The fire is out. The night is complete. Good night, traveler. Good night. Good night.